Welcome, everybody, to a Delco Nerd Network Hot Take. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've never seen a Delco Nerd Network Hot Take before, well, it's where a few friends get in a basement. We like to give our thoughts, give our opinions on a TV show, a movie, or a game. Today, it's going to be a game, and that game is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. My name, of course, is Anthony Ragucci, and here to discuss, as always, the triple threat, Chris Trio.
So it's my whip.
Yeah. Was it of a sexual nature? Or was
no, it's of an Indiana Jones
Were
nature.
you hurting me?
No, I was trying to pull you closer so I could beat you up.
So you're hurting me?
Yeah, but not like in the sexual hurting way.
No. When I said hurting, I meant like...
I see.
Not sexual.
Not like hurt
but
so
I mean,
good.
I understand why you said that.
Well, awesome. Gooch, I'm excited to talk to a little Indiana Jones. How's it going?
Yeah, I am as well. So let me introduce our guest returning for the first time in a few years. It's been like a bit. It's been a bit, we could say.
Yeah, I think the last thing we did was Star Wars related.
Yes, the gut check.
Oh, wow.
That was like, I want to say like 2.5 years ago. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, Phil Nicosia.
It's possible.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, man. It's been a while.
Thanks for having me. I'm not really sure why I'm here. I'm not really a big indie fan, but...
You played it.
I did.
You played it? Yeah.
I mean, dude, half the hardest part about finding people for your reviews, it's like, who fucking played every game, even if it's the most popular thing? It's like sometimes it's like, finding somebody local. I mean, we get virtual guests, but finding someone locally that like played the game, beat it. I'm like, I usually don't ask somebody if they haven't beaten it.
Yeah, well, I guess I shouldn't necessarily say that, but
you're here because you have good opinions, Phil.
Well, I had to beat it. I had to play it, and I had to beat it because of my relationship with Wolfenstein. So even if it wasn't an Indiana Jones IP,
I see.
Wolfenstein is so high on my list that's why I beat and finished and 100%.
So you're a machine games man.
Yeah.
But it's good to start to hear that you're not an Indiana Jones fan, because I would not consider myself an Indiana Jones fan either. I like it. We've reviewed every single Indiana Jones film on this podcast. So if you're interested, you can go watch all of those. I
would probably put myself in your, but like I enjoy Indiana Jones. I think the movies are watching them recently gave me a newfound appreciation for them, especially with how well I think they hold up. But yeah, I wouldn't call myself an avid fan. I think I joked with you about it before this came out. I was like, it's kind of odd this game's happening. Like it's an old IP that like our fathers like
that
a lot.
Had two bad sequels in the last, I'll say 20 years.
Sure, yeah.
I forget
one way worse than the other in my opinion. I didn't hate Dial of Destiny, but I still think that it's a wonder that this was even made. I'm excited to kind of chat about it just IP wise, and I'm really pumped for what Machine Games did here.
I want to give some background too, because this was Todd Howard's brainchild, apparently. And I think it tells you. I watched a lot of video essays recently about Starfield and Bethesda.
Sure.
And they all talk about how if Todd Howard is in on something, it seems to do well. What do you think Todd Howard was doing when Starfield was being made?
Making this too?
Yeah.
I think he was more focused on this, because I think this game is fucking great. It's one of the best games of last year, in my opinion.
I think it might be my game of the year.
You mean Indiana Jones?
Yes. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I agree.
And it's like, if Todd Howard was in this project like the whole time, I can feel it. I think with, like, for example, with Starfield, I feel like it's just like not as tight as this with Todd Howard at the head.
Sure.
Yeah, but I would probably agree with that. I think he was super into Fallout 4, and I think that there was a certain, even with all the criticisms, especially early on that Fallout 4 got, it felt very like there was a serious dedication to all things Fallout that made it what it was. And Starfield, like, I am one of the people who are still going back to Starfield and putting hours into it, trying to find that
thing.
I haven't done that since I've beaten it, and I kind of agree with you, man.
It's really depressing.
I've been thinking about me returning, and I'm like, I want to find that sweet spot for me.
Unfortunately, it's you
difficult.
have to make it for yourself because it's kind of not there.
But I do want to start with you, Phil, because you got it around Christmas time and you beat it before us, which I thought was nuts. And because I
can explain how that happened.
Okay, when I messaged you, I was like, would you want to be on the Indie Hot Take? And you were like, sure. And you were like, yeah, I already beat it. And I'm like, I'm like, you said you were getting around Christmas time because you had texted me.
Yeah.
But give us the story.
It's gonna sound insane. I did not want to play it prior to Christmas because I had felt like it was a good excuse to put something on like a Christmas list.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
It kind of had like a nostalgia feel.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get it physically. So I waited to get it until Christmas. And then the week of Christmas, everyone I know got sick, like flu type sick.
Oh, jeez.
And so I got sick the day after Christmas. In 48 hours, I put 30 hours into. I mean, this sounds insane. There are people who can back this up.
Listen, I love it.
I got like very sick and like just for a day where I was like, wow, I have the chills and I feel sick. But I had just started, maybe I put 40 minutes into Indy the day prior. So when I got sick and I got set up at about, 8 in the morning, I had like orange juice and I just did not leave. Like,
dude, that's,
yeah.
I love this.
Yeah. So I
kind of wish I could do that.
gonna say,
it was
it's
a
a good
really weird.
excuse,
It was a
right?
really
Yeah.
weird experience, honestly. I also did it while laying on a air mattress. I had my mom coming to visit the week of Christmas, and so I had pre-set up an air mattress, and so I literally just had orange juice, like tissue boxes, and Indiana Jones for like 30 hours.
Sounds like
Honestly,
a pretty great 30 hours.
In
to
about,
me,
I would say realistically, in about 2.5 days, I put 25 to 30 hours into it.
Damn.
Nice.
It was
Nice.
pretty like sleep, wake up.
And what did you think?
So I chose to play the game as vigorously in each location as possible.
Yes.
So
I think that is the
maxed
way to
out-
play.
Yes, and I did not do that in Star Wars Outlaws, and I regretted it. So I had played the main quest in Outlaws, thinking I'll go back and enjoy all these things later.
Right.
And I made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
So I had known that I wanted to do it that way regardless, but I spent like several hours in the Vatican before even knowing that Egypt was a portion of the game. I did not watch any media regarding the game prior. I avoided trailers, so it was a pretty immersive experience being sick and like fully.
experiencing it.
It
Yeah.
was pretty cool.
That's so cool.
It's a memorable, like, not to sound cheesy, but it was like when I think about it, other than feeling like physical shit, it was a pretty memorable, interesting experience. It's very hard for me to ever imagine going back to it. Obviously, if they, in this DLC.
Yeah, honestly,
there's
I
DLC?
think
I
that's
didn't
one
realize
thing
that,
to
yeah.
bring up about the negative. I don't think this game has any replay value at
No,
all.
it has very,
You need
very
to give
little.
it like 2 years so
So,
you
hold-
forget and
I-
then go back to it.
Can I
But-
stop you there for a second? Is
You
that
can stop
inherently
me.
a negative value? Like there are movies
I
I,
just
watch
think-
one time and I don't want to watch them for a while.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I think it's just like when you think about game, I think replay value is like, can I replay this? Can I get more
Yeah,
out
because
of this in
I
the
don't
first
feel
run?
that way about Wolfenstein, which is probably important to, like, I don't know how into Wolfenstein you guys are, but
I played
like
them
the
all,
first two.
even
I
Youngblood.
like the first one a lot. Yeah.
I have the Youngblood Platinum.
The Machine Games
and
iteration
Wolfenstein too.
of the franchise is like in my top. I'm not going to give a number, but it's up there.
Yeah.
Right.
And this, in every way that I enjoyed Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, almost all of it is mirrored from Wolfenstein.
Yeah, it's funny.
And maybe that's because I'm not like an avid IP Indiana Jones fan. So
Right.
Sure.
for me, like all the attention to detail with like postcards and like posters on the wall and historical references and then mechanically like the utilizing the photography and like the puzzle stuff, like all of that has a somehow in my brain a relationship to Machine Games and Wolfenstein. And all of it for me, it felt like I was playing another Wolfenstein game with some new flourishing dynamics,
right.
and then a slightly different world because it's pretty similar.
I
It's
will
still
say-
Nazis and the era.
Yes.
I totally agree, and you're kind of speaking to something like I thought I had when I was playing the game. I was like, this game's super video gamey, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I love the immersive sim aspects. I love how like you're just exploring this kind of section off place.
And
There's a lot of great
checklists.
yeah,
of,
and you're
of
kind
completion.
absolutely,
your
and it's not
journal,
overwhelming.
and you're
that
flipping
you're
through
flipping through it, that you're filling it up
pages,
with
yeah.
like I love how video gamey it is for how I thought it was going to be much more cinematic. And like, don't get me wrong, it is very cinematic in those cutscenes. But I think they did an amazing
And
job
that
balancing
probably speaks to its limits on replayability, because
Sure.
traditionally video games did not, if they would fall in a pattern where it was an arcade game which gave you a lot of replayability, or ironically Machine Games taking on Wolfenstein, they were replicating this old personality of early first person arcade shooters like Wolfenstein and Doom
with the modern sensibilities.
Yes,
yeah.
and so if you've ever played like Wolfenstein 3D, like after you've played it a couple times and you know the rooms, it kind of, and you know where the goal is,
it loses the luster.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this also has that. Like I just don't see myself going back.
Especially with the story too. It's like, you know what happens, and I'm sure like when you know the twist at the end, going back maybe it might, you know, like you would watch a movie once you know the ending, like you're looking at it through a different lens. But like I don't really see why you would do that with this.
I also just think that this game, and maybe this is a really important base point to make, but like for me, the game was not good because of the narrative. Like it did not feel like Uncharted to me. It was good because I enjoyed all the locations, I enjoyed the journey of it more than I did. Like I wasn't really thinking about the character development. I wasn't, even though there is that. So like it was interesting to follow like Gina, and like I was slightly interested about her sister or whatever. But for me, what they nailed about Indiana Jones was the locations are characters.
Yeah.
The whatever the quest that Indy is on, experiencing that journey is the fun. It's not about what's at the end of it. It's like,
I would
and
agree.
capturing that is hard to do in a video game, but you can tell they spent a lot of time on the animations regarding like, you know, recreating these moments from film where you jump off a thing and punch somebody and
right. Like I think like the one moment when you're in Shanghai very briefly and you have that I guess he's a Japanese soldier who just crash landed and he comes at you with a sword. You take out your gun and you shoot him. It's the scene from Raiders.
Right.
You know, like I feel like they are. And of course, the beginning of the game, you're replaying the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I think was I'm curious where along the lines of development they thought to do that. Because I think that's a real hook, line, and sinker. They're getting you in. You know, they're not just kind of like putting you, oh, you're at the college and you start there. No, you start out with like the moment of the IP that
that was pretty
everybody
ballsy.
knows.
I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it worked very well to kind of just like
Get you in,
everyone
yeah.
wants to like you kind of want to experience that moment to
It's
just
Alfred
get you back
Molina.
into it. And then by the end, you do have your own kind of Temple Run moment that is specific to this game a few times even. So
Yeah.
I do think that was great. But I just want to bring something back around really quick about the Todd Howard point earlier.
Okay.
I think an argument could be made by, not me, I actually, because I'm one of the weirdos who actually really did enjoy Starfield and kind of at least felt like I really did get something out of it. I think someone could make the argument that he just executive produced on this, so he didn't have that much to do with it. He wasn't the game director or anything, and that's why it did well. And since he had so much to do with Starfield and was the game director,
I mean,
and was
they're
the
two
head designer
totally
behind
different
that,
games, you
that's
know?
what I mean.
It is
so, like,
hard-
I
it
think
is
it's
hard to
kind of
evaluate.
tough to kind of put those two together. But I do think that there are so many amazing things about this game when it comes to the characters. I actually really did like the narrative, funnily enough. I found that
I
the
did
character
too.
development was great. I really cared about Gina and Indy's relationship by the end. And by the end of the events, I was pretty sad by what happened. But I don't know. I think overall they did an amazing job of capturing the feel of Indy. And I think you got to give a lot
Yeah,
of credit
I agree. I
to
agree
Troy
with
Baker.
that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about Troy Baker,
Yeah.
dude. I think this is the best performance he's ever had. No. You don't think?
I completely agree.
I think I don't. So when you start making this game, I imagine there's a huge roadblock of like, how do we do
Indy.
who plays Indy?
Yeah. And they were like, we're doing an impression. Like that's what we're doing as close as we can.
I think Troy Baker, a lot of his roles, I think since The Last of Us have kind of been middling. Like he just kind of is doing the same thing. Even Higgs in Death Stranding.
I'm not putting it down because I thought he was really good and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was so good that I just didn't. Like, there were times where I didn't even think about it.
Yeah,
that's what
want.
makes it so good. Is
Yeah.
that you just believed it was Indiana Jones. I'm not saying it wasn't good. It was really, really good, and I love Troy Baker. I'm just disagreeing that it was his best because I think
that's
no,
fine.
that makes sense.
I just think BioShock Infinite is his.
I think
That's his-
BioShock,
Totally, yeah. Oh,
Booker
yeah.
DeWitt.
and I
is
also
number
think he
two.
has a lot. There's a lot more play in BioShock Infinite
For sure.
him
'Cause he's not
There's
playing
very little.
someone, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
very little. But where he did get a little bit of play, and he did, like, I won't be able to reference it offhand, but like there were some moments in The Great Circle where he stepped away from Harrison Ford and it was good.
I agree.
Like there were moments where I thought to myself, like, I don't hear that coming from Harrison Ford, but I did hear it coming from Indy.
And you know what?
That's cool.
I think that's a really good way to put it.
You know
I
what's
totally
good
agree.
though?
Yeah.
You know, there are moments where he talks to himself very minusculely, but it's not like, again, I think there's
I
always
think
a big
you got to jump up there.
Right,
Yeah.
right. He doesn't do that too much because it's interesting that they didn't take the perspective of like third person. You don't really see your character all that much, and
So-
I'm curious as to why they decided to do it like that. Maybe it's because that's Machine Games' pedigree. They do FPS, but with getting Harrison Ford's face model, you think you'd want to show that off. But like, I think there was like a lot of restraint in not doing that. I mean, like every time I see him in a cutscene, he looks great.
I also felt though that they were like pulling out a few too many times. Like when you jump on things for a second,
Yeah,
and then it pulls out and goes right back in.
I would have preferred they just stayed with
I
Wolfenstein
completely,
and done
I'm
no
right there.
third person.
I think
Okay.
even
Yeah.
like the swinging, I almost would have rather them give you the option even in
Yeah,
the option
I
menus.
have no idea what forced them into this position where they thought to do that. I would
think
imagine
you just want to see indie.
Yeah, I would
like,
imagine that there was an early concept, and again, I'm just speaking out of my ass, but it seemed like it maybe was an early concept that they thought, well, you'll want to see this action being performed the way we know it in third person.
Yeah.
But the first person is done so well where you feel you're in the role of it
Yeah.
that there's almost moments where like I'm traversing something and it's like removing me from that
I agree.
immersion.
It breaks the moment. It breaks
Yeah.
the stride. You're
And also
jumping
there's
on
a certain,
something and
like-
it just pulls the camera
I will
out.
say this, it wasn't that long ago that Mirror's Edge had this personality of like parkour first person.
Dude, totally.
And like that was really fun and cool. Battlefield still does it where there's like first person rolling when you land and
Even all the Dishonored series and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
that's
Like
true
I
too.
think first
Yeah.
person works very
But
well.
that's just a
when done well.
preference thing.
Absolutely. And I actually maybe would have seen that. I would have loved to see maybe I've never seen this in a game like this, but like a third person versus first person option. Like I don't
Resident
know, like
Evil-
something even Fallout, like where I can change almost dynamically if I
Resident
want to.
Evil 8
Has the
added
first person
in
mode,
the-
right?
Yeah.
added in the third person mode
Oh, right,
after
yeah.
the game had released.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Which
it's
I've never
pretty
seen
interesting.
that done before.
Yeah,
either.
I don't. Yeah,
That's pretty weird.
Again, I'm curious, like where you go from a game design perspective that you're like, yeah, we can just switch to third person on the roll, because if you notice sometimes in first person, if you look at your shadow of your character running, it looks weird.
It looks hilarious. He's like arms are going
yeah,
up.
yeah. I think
have noticed that.
Cyberpunk, you run kind of weird You
because
can
it's
see it in your
to make
shadow.
sure your arms get in your field of vision.
Yeah,
so it feels
it's like
you're
you have
moving.
to create a good first person experience and a third person experience.
So it's a lot. I did feel like even the walking felt very satisfying. As weird as that sounds
I mean,
to say,
dude,
it's very much an immersive
You were kind
sim.
of talking about all of those immersive things, but like the sound effects, the whips, the
Yeah.
punches.
Also, in case nobody else brings it up, I have a tendency of doing this in this podcast, but the soundtrack by Gordy Hab was really good. So good that you probably didn't notice how good it was.
yeah.
So by the end,
I would
I think
agree.
it played like on the credits, it played the indie
Yeah.
theme, and then after
Which-
that, it started going into what I assume was the new stuff. I was like, oh, this is really good. Is
really
this like
good.
part
It's
of the new
very
stuff?
good.
Or
He
Yeah.
was brought on for Star Wars Battlefront, and
Oh, okay.
obviously they had utilized John Williams' work for Battlefront, and then they had also, from what I remember, utilized Gordy Hab. And then for this project, he definitely, like, I am big with continuity and things, and I'm also big in, and we probably disagree on this, we probably have before, but I don't love like callback stuff. I don't love like
Memberberry bullshit.
yes,
Yeah.
remember this bullshit. Like I'm just not. I don't keep that for Super Bowl commercials. I don't want that in your medium, in your art. And in The Great Circle, Gordy very, very seldom used these cues that
Yeah.
are very familiar to us. So it adds an impact that in the last sequence that you're referring to, when you finally have this classic John Williams melody,
sat there,
it's as
yeah.
powerful as it is
It's
because
true.
it's
It's the first time you're hearing it.
So
yeah.
they didn't really use that at all throughout the game.
It's
Otherwise,
very, very seldom.
seldom.
It's
Okay,
like-
there's probably like a
They will utilize it,
like yeah,
and
at the
then it
mo-
goes.
yeah.
yeah, or they will use like a different octave with like piano keys.
Sure.
Yeah.
Or they will
Right.
use just two of the four notes.
That is
Yeah.
because I did sit there at the credits. I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here and listen to the music for a moment. And
he
enjoy
uses those notes. Which is very common. John Williams did this when they did the prequels and also the sequels. They will borrow the notes and they will recompose them in a different way.
It's a motif.
Right.
Yeah, they're using
and
that
that's why it works so well.
And
I
it
would have
does
thought
work
that
really
it was
well.
new. Yeah.
So is I forget the
Gordy.
Is
Gordy
Gordy
had-
like a John Williams? Hey, you do his stuff well.
From what I know about him, which there's not much about him. I think his Wikipedia page mentions that he was like a big ET fan when he was young, and that's obviously one of John Williams' greatest.
Yeah, because
scores.
it is weird, and I would even say with the Star Wars, the Clone Wars, and like you have to do John Williams' score, but like you're not.
Yeah.
So you have to bring someone in that kind of is mimicking it or doing it.
Or in Mandalorian, it was proven that you don't need to do that,
Yes.
and you
Right,
can be
that's true.
successful not doing it.
Right.
And even though I prefer the traditional John Williams, it's not like I can ever disrespect what Ludwig did with Mandalorian because it was really well done. It was Western. It had almost like a dubby.
Sure.
And Outlaws also took that approach where
Kevin
they balanced
Kiner,
in between.
I loved Outlaws
The
theme
Clone
a
Wars
lot.
opening, like I think is like as somebody I love the Clone Wars and like it almost contests with like the original Star Wars opening because I feel like it's so prequel based and I'm like, yeah, that's the fucking prequels. Hearing that Clone Wars intro,
it is nice to like I probably wouldn't like that, but it is nice to distinguish some differential. Like when
Between the eras, right? Yeah.
yeah, when Rogue One came out, there was a lot, at least for me, there was a lot of questions about how Michael Giacchino was going to do the score, and he used a different melody. And the first time I ever seen Rogue One in theaters, they played the Star Wars melody for Rogue One, and I was like, what the hell was that?
I actually think that's
but then 5 years later, I was like, wow,
I appreciate this.
That's Rogue One.
Yeah.
So,
That's fair. Yeah.
So sometimes it does happen.
You're creating
that way.
your identity out of
Yeah.
like the base of what's come before.
Right.
Yeah. I think everything we just talked about does exactly that, whether it's Mandalorian, Clone Wars, Indiana Jones, and the Great Circle. Like, yeah, you have to have like some respect, but also the willingness to do
Reinvent
different.
a little. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to quickly pivot, because I do want to talk about him. I want to make sure we do. Voss. What did you guys think of him? Because I got to say, he was one of my favorite parts by the end of the game.
Yeah.
And, spoilers, his death was amazing, in my opinion. I fucking love that. It felt so Indiana Jones. But I thought the actor was really insane and just like, I don't even know. He just plays the Nazi scientist role so well. What did you think, Gooch?
So at first I was like, is this just the guy from Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Right.
Like that's who reminded me
or
of.
a combination,
Right.
combination of the two. Raiders is there's the dude with the glasses, and then there's the other guy, Tot or whatever.
Right,
yeah.
They're almost like a combination of the two because the obsession with like what Indy's after,
Right.
also his devotion to the Nazis. It was kind of like a combination of the two.
Yeah.
He
and-
almost
and-
kind of wants Indy's respect, too. Like, in a
Yeah,
weird
well,
way,
like, and I really felt like Voss was Indy,
his mirror.
the opposite.
Right.
Yeah, like he's just like they are the same, but they're different. And I wouldn't
Big
say
theme.
that like the villains in Raiders is necessarily like that. So it was kind of interesting to see them like.
Yeah.
Go into that where like Emmerich Voss is like he's been in the papers and like his name got spelled wrong and he's kind of pissed about that because he wants people to know about his accomplishments and his discoveries. I don't think they ever get into that with Indiana Jones of like obviously he's a college professor and he works at a college and he does collegiate things
Right.
and
He
he's
teaches.
involved in but like does Indiana Jones care that he's like published in papers and like written about and like people are talking about his discoveries? I don't really think we have ever seen enough
No.
to really say that.
And I
you
did-
probably say no because he always is like, well, the real archaeology is done in the field. Like
Right.
he says that in Sokotai to Gina, and it's just like, yeah, that makes sense because that's definitely who he is.
I do like the exploration of him being like the school's pissed he's gone, and they don't really resolve that by the end. And he's just like, dude, I got to be out here. Like you said, I'm doing the real shit. I'm out here like finding the stuff. But then you have this run-in with one of his old students.
Yeah,
and I
so-
thought that was a very interesting dynamic
my-
to kind
so
of
my-
illustrate
yeah.
that, where he's like, maybe I should be teaching. And by the way, he definitely was the one that was supposed to write her a reference, and he did because she's like, a professor was supposed to write me a reference and never got back to me.
My prayers as someone like I liked the villain in this game. I thought he was good. I thought he dictated well the character that you need for a traditional indie story. But because I'm a Wolfenstein fan before I'm an Indiana Jones fan, and I love dynamic villains that are super creepy, and not that he wasn't, but he just was pretty. He's pretty tame,
Sure.
Which I guess he would
Well,
have.
Really?
in the world.
I thought
In this world.
got a little creepy.
Towards
a little,
the end,
little
his
Nazi.
little,
his face movements and everything.
My prayer.
What a nerd.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. But my prayer is that we get a DLC that's either standalone or a second game where Indy's student survived and has one fucking bionic arm.
Dude, she's totally coming
Give
back.
me like
yeah.
a Wolfenstein bionic arm lady who has like a personal vengeance on Indy, and you have a fucking second game.
I
would be
sadly
pretty
don't think
cool.
they do the bionic arm. I think it would be like a regular prosthetic.
No,
but
what if
I
it's like
completely
an
agree. Yeah.
artifact or something?
Could be.
No, yeah, an artifact,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
it could be like a World War II looking, like
You're right. That's
prosthetic.
totally the setup, though. I think.
I
she
hope
would
so.
Totally,
That would
I
be
think
pretty
that's-
cool.
I hope so.
I think I would love to see a sequel to this
Annika,
game.
right?
And
That's
a
her name, yeah.
female villain is cool. They tried it in Crystal Skull, but it was kind of wonky because they're the Soviets. But a younger female villain with one arm with a personal vendetta who you had
We've never really
remedial
had that in
experience
Indiana
with in
Jones.
the
Well, we
first
see
one.
almost like two. It's funny because they show like two sides of it. They show her, who's like the Voss type, and they show, I forget, the elders in the village at Sakatai. His son's like, he goes searching for his son in a temple, and he's also kind of trying to be like an archaeologist.
Oh,
and
yeah,
he's,
yeah.
his nephew, and it's a bit more altruistic. Like he's doing it for the love of the craft, like Indy, and she's
For the
trying to pull him
culture,
away,
yeah.
and he's like, "You're never gonna stop that train or whatever, kid. Gina, let's go." So. I did really like the exploration of that theme of these different archaeologists.
As far as the story goes, yeah, I felt kind of the opposite way that you did. That you were like, you cared about Gina, and at the end you were like disappointed. I felt at the end of this, like Indiana Jones' character development through this was kind of awkward towards the end of it, in my opinion, because there's a certain sentiment that he's like, if there's character development, so we meet him, let's just make the premise clear. We meet him after Raiders.
Yeah.
Right.
Temple of Doom is a prequel. So
Yes, so 2 movies
that's
have
behind
happened.
him.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we open the game with a reference to Marion that I thought was really strong. Like they have these little quotations, and I was like, damn, this is cinematic as shit and really interesting. And it's shown that he still has this affinity for her, and even like I thought maybe they were going to play that he almost had like a depression over it, which would have been kind of interesting to see him.
I think what there definitely is. He clearly
Yeah,
gives a
yeah,
shit.
so it
he's
was-
he's
it
trying
was
to fill a
cool.
void with Gina.
Right.
Maybe so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then towards the end of the game, what I was disappointed about with his relationship with Gina was the resolve was that she gets captured, right? And then he remind me from the week of Christmas. Then he goes back to save her.
So she gets captured in Sakatai, and
Yep.
then you go to where the Great
Iraq.
Circle is, Iraq.
Yeah.
And then you rescue her.
Yeah.
And you want
But
to
then
leave. Yeah.
you want to leave, right?
Yeah,
But
well,
you
Then
don't.
she's like, well, but you're ready to go, and she's like, don't you want to see what's at the fucking end of this?
Yes.
And then he's like, you're
was
goddamn right, I do.
But at the moment he was thinking with his heart,
Right.
Not with, I guess, his head.
His archaeology
brain,
yeah. And,
yeah. He was more worried about the girl than he was the treasure.
And I think
in
Gina,
that moment.
Gina realizes that by the end, and she's like, "Listen, you're still searching for something." and I
Yeah,
know
so
that.
okay, so that's okay. Thank you for reminding
Yeah,
me.
no, yeah.
That's kind of the point that I was trying to remember is that it just felt awkward that they're, even though yes, at the end of it the resolve is he's Indiana Jones, that they play with like character development, but then they essentially negate the development and leave the rest for us to just say, well, there's the films after this.
Well, I was gonna say it is tough
Yeah.
with that aspect
Yeah,
too.
whereas,
yeah,
like,
it's kind of like Solo.
You know,
there's only so much you can do.
You're retconning something, so you're forced into.
Especially-
so it felt awkward at the end because I almost would have rather they
got together.
I would say I'm a James Bond fan over Indiana Jones, just generally speaking.
Sure, yeah.
And I try to compare the two because I think they're way more similar than people give them credit for. James Bond, they're treated much more like serials where. I'm not saying what happens after one film doesn't matter, but we we allow things to just like fizzle away.
Yeah.
And I almost would have rather him said, like, at the end of it, when he goes back to get her in Iraq,
Right.
he makes this decision that no matter what fucking happens, he's gonna save her because she's more valuable than
the knowledge. Yeah.
Yes. And it would have, in my mind, at least when I played it the first time, and at some point I'll play it again. But
Sure.
when I played it, I thought to myself, that's kind of fucking cool that he was like, you know what? In this story, I'm just going to save her.
Right.
And then
But that's not a lot
I
of
got
fun to
3
play.
more hours of
Right,
him
right.
saying, "Fuck it."
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're
But
done.
and it's also like, yeah, I
I'm
agree
always
with you.
shorter as sweet person too. Like I could have done
Sure.
without the last like the Noah's Ark reveal. As cool as like
Dude,
that was,
I
that's
thought,
cool.
Yeah, I
as
was
it
gonna
was.
say, that was really
nuts.
cool.
I was
Yeah,
like,
as cool as it
holy
was.
shit.
I didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah.
I did like the way they wrap that up in the Great Circle, and even like the mythology of the Great Circle itself, and the Nephilims, and like how they originate before the Bible, and they're mentioned in the Bible. I think that they really use
Adamic.
the
I didn't know that.
historical.
Is that a real thing?
I
Adamic?
believe so. Yeah. It's just so.
Is it like from Adam? Is it?
I believe so. I think it's like
Yeah.
the original, like the
They're like the
language that all
descendants
languages
of-
descend from.
Right. Yeah.
It could be mythology.
Also, I could
Yeah.
be completely incorrect, so don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
I thought the design of like the temples and the ship, like how they kind of
yeah,
coincided, was
yeah,
really
it was
cool.
cool. They
Yeah.
definitely focused.
But-
It's not like they. It's not like they just like threw
Just
it
threw
out.
it against
I
the
was
wall.
actually
Yeah.
really like once we saw the arc, and I'm like, I kind of hope I don't have to go through that and like get to the top.
Right, and I appreciated that you didn't.
Like, I'm
actually.
like, oh,
It
yeah.
was late in the game, and there was a lot of like. So
That last section's quick. It's like a
It is.
45 minutes to an hour.
So that's-
actually.
that's-
Oh yeah. Once you get to Iraq.
Yeah,
yeah, my biggest thing that not that I think anybody will care about my opinion, but the biggest
that's why you're
opinion I
here.
drew
I
from
care
the
about
whole
your
thing
opinion, Phil.
was that this was nearly, not perfectly, but nearly one of the best paced games. And Wolfenstein generally does a good job of this as well, but selecting 3 platform locations.
Right.
So you had the Vatican, Egypt, and
Sukhothai.
Thailand.
Yeah. Is
Taking,
it Thailand?
yeah.
I didn't realize that was in.
Like
that
I know,
makes sense,
like
yeah.
Well,
like.
Sukhothai is like the ancient. I think it's ancient South Thailand.
So does it change in the modern day? It's not.
I actually think
because it's like Siamese. Like
I could
Siamese
be
is from this area.
I could be a wrong
Okay.
historical studies dropout from Westchester.
I think
right
your
here.
geography's
I
spot
could
on.
be wrong.
Sounds right to me.
But I think that this game they're referring to it as Sukhothai, but I actually think during World War II it was already Thailand. But I'm
Okay.
not sure.
Or
And I'm not saying
Sukhothai,
they're
like a
wrong
location
about it.
within Thailand.
I think the game is treating Sukhothai as a reference to ancient.
Well,
Right, like
even
that's the-
Southern
Giza
Thailand.
is spelled differently
Correct.
than
Yeah.
it is now. It's spelled with
Yes.
an A, not an EH. And I was like,
Yeah.
is that like
And-
how they said it or how they
and-
spelled it?
And
In
I can
ancient?
I can tell you that in English, Giza during the early 20th century was Giza. So I'm not sure why.
Is that like Arabic spelling, or is that how they would spell it on the other side? I don't know. Yeah, that is interesting. I wonder why they
No,
would
I,
do that.
I don't
I
know
know
where
that in
they're pulling
English
that
in the
from.
20th century we were utilizing that spelling. So
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I'm sure it's a cool detail that I'm just ignorant.
Right,
to.
right.
Yeah.
So and
yeah.
Sukhothai I think is also that.
Right.
From again from what I think I know, it's Thailand. They're just utilizing the ancient reference.
Going to your point about the pacing,
Yeah.
I have a. I have
Oh,
a,
yeah,
I have
we
a,
bought this
I have
up.
a
Well,
conflict with that.
I do too. So if you want to wait and just see what my base is and see how.
Yeah, okay.
So you have,
Shut
so
the fuck up.
Here's why it's good. You have 3 platform locations.
Yeah.
Very
that-
distinct, yeah.
Yes, that are distinct from one
And some
another.
smaller ones.
And then Marshall College it's like a what do you want to call that? It's a
Like an intro zone.
It's like an intro zone,
Yeah.
and then you have these other slick little thrown in locations that have linear narrative reasoning for going there, and they're okay to a certain extent.
Yes.
The one thing that I was disappointed about when I played this was you have the Vatican, and historically you have the influence of fascist black shirts, and they are your primary enemy. Then you go to Egypt in northern Africa, which at the time was occupied by Nazi Germany. So your primary classic opponent is the German Nazis. When we land in Shanghai, they could have cut Sukhothai out of the entire game and just allowed one of the most interesting places in the world, in the history of the world, Shanghai, to have been the 3rd central location. And you could have had the Japanese occupiers of Shanghai to be
Phil,
a
you're right.
distinct,
Holy shit.
a distinct fascist imperialist enemy, and then you would have had your 3 platforms that are distinctly unique. So like
I like it.
the OCD in me when you leave Shanghai, I was like, no, why are
We
we
gotta
leaving?
go back.
And then to go to Sukhothai and there's Italian
black shirts.
fascists was weak. Like
It's funny. I wasn't even thinking about
It's-
that.
that's-
now
the
that
people you were
now
saying.
that you've explained the reasoning,
dude,
I have to agree with
when
you.
I saw the Japanese Zero pilot and I thought, I went from black shirts to classic Nazi to Imperial Japanese. I was in heaven. And then we left, and I was so bummed. Because, like, occupied China is a very unused. But
was that like, this was like Manchurian Raid.
This is the rape of Nanking. This is Japan's post-Russian war, conquering, essentially, occupation of China. Brutal, violent, and also shares all the commonalities of how the Germans occupied Egypt and all these amazing sites. Like, Shanghai, China has some of the greatest temples. Like, China is an incredibly
But was it not all like
place.
so was it not destroyed, like heavily destroyed by this time? Like, so
yeah,
my
the major
thought process,
urban areas were.
Right. So my thought process on that, I actually like that from the enemy point of view. I didn't even think about that. I think that's very interesting.
I have to admit,
me,
going back to Sakatai, it's like, oh, here are the black shirts. We're back. We're the Italians.
And
like,
imagine all
I
the
think-
propaganda, like the Imperial Japanese propaganda you would have seen, just like the Mussolini stuff. Now you have, like,
Hirohito.
Yeah, like you have all these
Yeah.
Hirohito references and like more postcards from like, Japan, and like there's so much more left there.
See, I think for me, I think that would have been more boring because you're back in another urban environment that would be severely destroyed.
Not necessarily.
Sure.
You could
So for
leave-
me, like, I like that we start in this very urban, historical Vatican setting. Then we go to this desert Egypt,
Still
Giza,
historical,
very
in a very
historical
different
in
way.
a very different
Yeah.
way. We get to hang out there and we get to experience all this very interesting stuff.
And then you go to a
go to a
jungle.
jungle with this classic kind of
I'd have to
temple
get a Google
thing.
map, but I'm pretty sure we can find a jungle in China.
Oh, for
Shanghai.
sure. So, no,
Let's-
and that,
let's
so
do it
that
right
would be, if it was like that, I agree. I think that would be a bit
Yeah.
more interesting. But I do
I
like
agree,
the aspect of going into the jungle and exploring these like classic temples. Like, I was like, when you get up to the one face in the one side temple, I was like, what's the old show on Nickelodeon? Temple of Doom or Hidden Temple. I was like, we're in the fucking Hidden Temple. I don't know why it made me laugh, but I really like that aesthetic a lot.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
do
I'm
think
not
the idea
shitting
of
on
approaching
Thailand.
it,
But World War II,
Thailand a country?
like this takes place like
Right.
pre-World War II, very near World War II.
38, right? I believe. I think this is when
37.
36 or 37.
Okay. Here, I'll look it up
it's
now,
after
actually.
Raiders and before Last Crusade is 38.
Okay.
When Hitler visits, I don't know if they're Nuremberg, but
Yeah,
Last Crusade,
when he hands him
that's,
the,
I
he
think,
signs
30
his journal.
Yeah, I think that's 38.
So what I was gonna say
what's your
had
pacing
nothing to do
conflict?
with what you said,
Okay.
which is good.
That's good.
because
I'm
I don't
glad.
think we're in opposition.
100%.
What?
37?
100%. Yeah. I was just saying I agree. Sorry.
Okay, I
yeah.
was like, what are you 100%ing? You were looking up the date.
Oh, yes. So keep going. I'll tell you in a sec. Yeah.
Okay, so the zones. Yeah, I liked Marshall College. I loved going to the Vatican. I don't think Italy as an Italian American myself, Italy is not in games a lot. So like Assassin's Creed 2, I kind of like seeing like different aspects of Italy. I think
It's also cool that it's not
very used a
Italy,
lot.
it's the Vatican,
Right,
which is
right.
like
Right, it's Vatican
own-
City. Yeah. And again, like we're seeing the black shirts and Mussolini, not something in games a lot.
the
even
inner
when-
politics of the Vatican at the time.
Right,
too.
yeah, very interesting. You're going on the rooftops. We're
Awesome.
going into the Sistine Chapel, all this stuff. Then Giza. I love ancient Egypt, so I loved kind of trekking around the desert. Barely fast traveled in any of these zones. I'm just kind of walking around like, I love just like I'm walking from like dig site to dig site and just kind of like taking in the views. And I didn't find it boring to, walk for like 2 or 3 minutes to the next place instead of fast traveling. Himalayas was great. We got our snow level and then the quick Shanghai like war zone, and now we're in Sukhothai. And I think the pacing, it's like it was a full bucket and we just dumped the pacing out. I hated the boat. I hated
too.
getting in and out of
Me
the
too.
boat.
We're gonna agree on all
dude,
of this.
I was like, the pacing of this game was totally ruined by that
I
last
agree.
zone.
And specifically the puzzle ventures in Sukhothai.
Dude.
were-
I mean, we both got the...
Yeah, we both
all the
100%ed it, or
yeah.
at least did it. I mean, I achievement 100%ed it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
will explain that in a minute.
That Khmer cog puzzle, I was like,
Yeah.
dude, going back and forth,
Yes.
jumping on the boat. I was like, it seems like this zone, maybe they just ran out of time
Yep.
with like developing how you would traverse it. And the fast travel system was not intuitive enough for this place.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I didn't need it.
I
Yeah.
liked
And
it
now
a lot. I did. I did
you-
like how
but did-
slow
did you-
the boat was. That's
did
my
you
only.
100% it?
Yeah, I got every single side thing. I just didn't get every single like
Artifact,
or
that's
whatever.
why.
But I did. But again, I don't know. I don't think as someone who I guess just did the main stuff and did the major side stuff, I did think it worked very well.
Because
the fast traveling around for all the artifacts and stuff, even in Giza, I did not like that. I felt like I was trying to get back and forth between places. You have these signposts.
Vatican and Giza were so good, and Sukhothai was cool. It just
navigating it was not cool.
Navigating specifically,
I agree with that.
Specifically navigating that map, that environment, when you collect every journal entry, because I did everything.
Yes, I did too.
So having to go through that and jumping off the boat and looking at the map, and then you can't get through an invisible
constantly
wall.
bringing up the fucking journal in the boat.
It's annoying that you can't drive with the journal up. That was one thing I was like, what are we doing? Why can't we do that?
Or the map marker could just stay the fuck up.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay,
exactly.
so now the only other thing I wanted to mention about it, this is not really the pacing's fault, but this game, at least for me, was glitch laden. Like,
really,
dude,
okay.
I could not 100%
played on Xbox,
this
right?
game.
Series X.
Yeah.
Okay, I did too. We all played. Obviously, we all
my
played on Series
game
X.
is 100% broken right now.
Really?
So until a hard patch, Gina is stuck. Dude.
So there was continue.
I
have
didn't
one
have
of these
any
too.
bugs.
Dude, I lost 2.5 hours of playtime that I had to make back up with a rollback save because the game is as broken.
Was
as
it in
was.
Giza?
No, it was in Sukhothai.
Okay, because I had two glitches. I can't remember the second one, of course, but there was one with Gina. It was when I was in Egypt. I was in one of the side, it might have been the main one, whatever, when she's with you. And she has to like walk over with you to a spot where she has to climb up and like shine a light.
Yeah.
She just wouldn't move.
Yeah.
She was standing
So
there.
I had
to
some things like
physically
that.
push her to the place that she did it.
My game for I would say I put about, I don't know, to complete it 100%. I put hours into it, obviously, to go back and get everything. If I was on Sukhothai, you could not interact with Gina, and she only had 4 voice lines, and she repeated them and continues
That happened to me
them.
too. She we talked about Marshall College, and I'm like, why is she saying this? again?
No. This is dude. Dude.
Like, she was
Mine,
like,
were you in a
repeating.
fight every time you get on the boat?
mine is if you are standing within 40 feet of her, she's saying, "Oh God, help! Oh God, help!" No, I had to mute my
repeatedly?
game. Yes, I had for the last like 4 hours of my
That's
game.
rough.
I had to mute her. I had to mute all voice volume.
Damn.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah,
and then
that's weird.
I also couldn't give her the radio transmissions. So like you collect the radio
And you pull 'em
transmissions
out.
I couldn't give them to her either. I had to bring her back to the village
and then
put
hand
them.
the thing on. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I was confused
You
because
had
it
to
was
be in like a
it is a little
specific
confusing.
spot. Like,
yeah, because it
it's
said
very
like
annoying.
here she is. You can hand it to her.
Yes.
Like no, you can't.
Yeah. Well, mine was beyond that way. Mine was
Right.
actually broken, and I had to use a rollback. So I was very
frustrating.
frustrated with all of that.
Yeah.
I also had a lot of puzzle issues where like it would say on my map that there's something there, there's nothing there.
That happened to me with a lot of like journal entries and photos. I'm like, there's nothing here. It's like not pointing.
Shout
Yeah,
out to
that
some random people on Reddit who, in 2 or 3 instances, literally, if without them, I would not have the 100%. I had one instance where my Xbox would not get, even though I completed what I was supposed to, the Xbox would not give me the achievement for journal entries until I found someone on Reddit who said, go back to the Vatican, take your camera out, take a photograph of like this random location, and it will give you the achievement. I don't know how that psychopath figured
Dude,
that
Reddit,
out.
when that
say,
kind of
douche
shit
knows,
is
Dude,
like,
me and like 8 other people were like, thank you, God, thank you,
as an
OP.
achievement hunter, I can't tell you how many weird times things like this have happened where it's like, I did this random series of events and I figured out how to like pop it. It's like,
Yes.
what?
Yep.
Like how,
Yeah.
you know?
So other than the glitches, the pacing was,
Going to the puzzles, I did like all the puzzles. I thought they were pretty difficult without being like too difficult, except for that one with the people in Sukhothai. That one was pretty difficult. I actually.
Oh, really? That took me like 2 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
setting all the people up.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought it was cool, but I had problems with it. And the cipher, I actually didn't really understand.
Which one's the cipher
The one
again?
where we're on the boat, and you have to put in like the cipher codes and.
I don't remember that.
In the,
Is it-
in the
it's like,
Himalayas.
so are there like 3? There's like 4 circle.
yeah.
And it already says like 4
Yeah, I
letters.
was
So what you?
I
So
was really confused.
there's 2 of those. One in the Himalayas,
Yeah,
which I
and
got.
Sukhothai,
Which
yeah.
so I don't want to. Do you want me to explain it, or do you want to just move? I don't want to sound like a.
Yeah. I mean,
So, like,
sure.
there's-
I didn't figure it out.
You have 4 discs, and then they give you like a code word, and then you have to line up. It's like GIF, for instance.
Yeah.
And you basically have to pick them all up and make sure each disc has that corresponding letter on it. Put it into each slot. Line up the word. and then there's a word underneath it,
Which
that
it
you
did
use
not
is the
make
code.
clear that
Dude,
that was.
I don't
And then
think
it's
I
the-
noticed the word underneath.
And there's because
Yeah.
there's an open slot. And
It's
there's the
not
one,
very clear, but it's the word.
That's
underneath.
what I missed.
and then it's
what?
on.
I'm like, what
it's
is it
on the
telling
list
me?
here. Yeah. So
That's fucking
But so the second
stupid.
time I tried that, and then it has like a German S on it, and I couldn't figure it out. So I just moved on. Like it was last night when I was trying to finish it.
I like how it's like in game. If you take the pictures, it just kind of tells you the solution.
Yeah,
Right.
So
hint
you know,
system.
I think that's awesome.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
hint
If you
system.
take enough pictures, it just tells you the solution.
I was unaware.
Which is nice because I think it's
Yeah.
like, hey, what if you're I don't know, you're a kid or like
Yeah,
I think this
younger.
game
Yeah, I agree.
appeals to a lot of different audiences,
Which is awesome.
So having it in game that you can just easily get through a puzzle you're stuck on, I think is great.
Right.
Or even if, again, somebody like me who I'm like, I've been doing this for like 30 minutes. I think I've had my fill.
Right.
You know, and I can just ding, ding, ding. Okay.
The
There's a
final
solution.
puzzle, the ancient puzzle, that was not easy.
I looked it up.
You have to once you
You have to make
know-
words, right? That's what I
No,
was.
no, you have to
put
fill
all
the
the things-
slots.
Yeah.
But once you know how each thing works,
It's just a matter of where to
it's just
put
there's
it.
and
two
it's
of
spending
those,
the
right?
time doing it.
Yeah.
There's one at the end where you have to put all 50.
Right, but then
Yeah.
there's one in the middle where you put like 20, like you have to unlock one with it, right? It's like a smaller version of that puzzle.
There's
They're in
one in
sections.
Giza. Yeah.
No. The final puzzle is in sections.
No, I know, but I thought
There's
'cause I
another-
remember there's another
there
like
is.
separate
You do
puzzle
this.
that
Yeah, you do
earlier
this.
on. Okay.
Yeah,
You
yes,
utilize
So
this
it's that
technology.
same idea, yeah. Because I
Yeah.
got to the
On
wall
a
and I was
gra-
like,
on a
I
much
don't have all-
grander scale.
Yeah,
Right,
it's
okay.
it's massive on the last one.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
I
so
lo- I
what's
looked that
behind
up.
that? So I'm curious. How does that affect anything? Is it
You
just
get a
new-
final cutscene.
Oh, okay. So what is the cutscene?
Do you want to talk about the ending as like in bulk and then roll into that? I mean, I know we
Yeah.
talked
Oh,
about Noah's Ark.
so does
but
that
we-
how much does it affect the ending? I guess I should say.
It essentially it leads the ending.
sequel?
Oh, really? Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
continue. Sorry.
So I really like the ending of like, you know, I didn't really, you know, when they first explained the Great Circle, I thought it was like, okay, I understood that there's like, you know, ley lines in the world and like all these sites create like a circle around the world. Like that's kind of what I thought it was. I mean, I guess that's what they all thought it was. And then you find out it's like through the stones and stuff that, you know, it's not it's not what that is. It's like the wheel to Noah's Ark ship.
Yeah.
I was like, that's insane. And I really like the ending of like, you get a little bit more time with Voss and he exposition dumps and kind of explains
It's a movie scene,
everything.
yeah.
And, you know, I like when like the Nephilim invade Iraq. I think Locust was pretty cool. Tony Todd's last role. Is
Yeah.
that confirmed?
yeah,
That
I think so. Oh,
didn't
I don't
do
know if
any-
it's his. I don't know if it's his last role, but I mean,
one of 'em.
He did
would
an
be-
amazing job. I
It
really
would
liked
be
him in
one
this.
of them. You would
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. And I just like, yeah, I like how like you end up be kind of becoming friends with him.
Yeah, he
as
was
you go
kinda
to
cute.
save Gene.
He's like
He's
at the
kinda
end,
cute.
like I was kind of like, oh, this is cute. Like
Yeah.
that we
I think
care.
that the idea of the Nephilim and like, you know, like these protectors of like the Adamic language.
they're like the Magi.
Yeah. It's like secret
and I like the
organization,
idea
yeah.
that
Yeah.
Voss is like these people were like they caused the Great Flood and like
He
that's
does, yeah,
why
they
they're
don't know.
doing this.
Yeah, he's like they don't know for a fact. That's like a theory that.
Yeah.
And even the Locust does say it. He's like I must repent for my people or something like that.
Yeah. And then when he puts all the stones in and activates the wheel, I was like, holy shit. I was like, they're fucking just flooding the earth, I guess.
Or was it? That's the other thing. I did love that scene of them pulling the ark out. I was like, this is awesome. But
Yeah.
I'm like, how'd you get that in the water? Where did that just go? What just happened?
Oh, dude,
Anyways,
yeah. I was like, how did this thing get in here? Was this just here?
I was like, are they in the ocean? What's happening? But
Yeah, I like the last cutscene. I just think was really cool, and I was really into the moment. And then
guys getting struck by lightning. And
going
shit.
back to the end, I did like how Gina kind of rejects Indy and is like, "You got your own shit to figure out, dude. See ya." And I think it plays into the movies, and I mean, I think you're right where you could have gone the Bond angle and he could have ended up with her, but we know it doesn't last.
Yeah.
I think that would have been fine.
Or he could have rejected her.
Right.
Anything would have.
I don't think Indy would have done
in
that
my mind,
in this,
like
in this stage.
in my mind, anything other like it just felt like it was the most. It was the easiest ending for them, for her to just like say sayonara and leave, and then him go back to the Indy from the beginning of the story. It's just hard reset.
For sure.
I was kind of looking for with Voss. I was curious if he was like, I'm not a Nazi. I'm really just using the Nazi
Well,
party.
there is that,
but
there-
he seems
he's-
like Heil Hitler, totally into
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
he's like,
I-
we're gonna decimate the world with this teleporting ship. You just wait.
The Wehrmacht, whatever
Yeah,
that
the
German word
Wehrmacht.
for war,
Yeah.
for war machine is. Yeah, and I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, dude, holy shit. Like, yeah, just like imagining that tech where they just like transport all these troops and
Yeah,
tanks
shout out to
into-
whoever's idea it was to put the German warship or I don't remember what type of vessel it was, but that had
on Machu Picchu.
that just like slammed into a mountain. Like that's some Indiana Jones 80s shit.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
Yeah,
like I
like-
was imagining when I played that portion of the game. This is like the super like nerd in me, but like I imagine how cool that would have been in 1981 if like Gary Kurtz was producing and you had this like miniature model in snow.
Yeah.
You know, like in an
my
80s
God.
movie, how cool that would have looked.
Yeah,
true,
it
man.
was very
Again, the
I would
tone,
agree.
it could not feel more Indiana
But
Jones.
I
to
just
me.
thought in the experiment they made, like they're out in the Pacific Ocean and I forget Gina's sister's name.
Laura.
Laura
The one
Lombardi.
we're led to possibly suspect she's a Nazi, but then ultimately discover that she wasn't a Nazi all along and her story's basically worthless.
Sure, Phil.
Well, that's not
Sure.
true. He stopped her from getting the stone for the moment. I
Yeah.
mean, and also I think she was trying to,
And
find
like
the circle.
dude, it's funny. I'm playing Gears 5, and there's a level in that game where like everyone's frozen,
Yeah.
and like seeing everyone frozen on the ship was pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
different
kinda
kind of
Yeah, the way
brutality.
that they're all just like kind of
Yeah.
huddling.
I don't know.
and-
I thought it would have been cool, like when they're giving you the suspicion that maybe the sister is a Nazi. I thought it would be kind of cool for us to like face an unfortunate truth that this character has
Sure.
to accept that there are bad ideas and that people who are good people can be formulated
Yeah, okay.
into,
I like
especially
that,
for the
Phil.
things they care about. And again, it would have played into a little bit of character development for Indy to teach someone something. Like I've been around. Because like everybody likes the trope of like him being like, I hate these guys about Nazis, but
I hate these Nazis.
yeah, but there was something in the middle of the game. I think at the end of the Vatican, I guess maybe so before you go to Giza, where I thought it would have been cool if we were leading to a point where we do meet Gina's sister, and she is a Nazi, and this experience that a lot of people did in the 30s and 40s, where you can be a good person or have a family member who you have to accept the fact that bad ideas can exist in good people's minds, whether permanently or temporarily. And that's a cool, even Star Wars does it with like the Empire. And like you have good people who are forced or otherwise self-coerced into doing horrible things, and putting Indy in the middle of like, because he's always just in the middle of the politics and he remains like pretty much like, I just punch the guys that are in the way of the stone.
Neutrally unneutral, like he doesn't like Nazis, but like he's not.
Yeah. So it would have been interesting to hear, like, if they had the balls to say, like, we're gonna throw in like a person that has this conflict, and because I guess the traditional conflict is I'm an archaeologist, and I don't know. It felt like they kind of threw some things away. It just felt like, I get it. Like we have movies after this.
Right, I was
but they
expecting a
throw lot
confrontation
away.
between Gina and
I
her
thought Gina
sister.
would see her sister and like, yes, a confrontation. Like, how could you, or like
something.
and then
Yeah.
puts the stone in the
I was
thing.
kind of surprised that we just didn't see her face. That was
Yeah.
more. I was like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought
Right.
I thought she was coming back. Honestly,
Yeah.
like I thought that wasn't her, but then it's like she looked at her, so it must have been her.
Yeah.
So I did think that was a little odd in and of itself. And I mean, I think it would have been a bit more hit home a little harder with what you're saying for sure.
It's
and
just
they kind
there's
of
a
do
lot
it
of-
with Annika already, the student
Yeah.
that he has. But obviously, that's not something
there's
he's in
just
love
a
with.
lot of like good guy, bad guy, and when you introduce, especially in a story that takes place in the 30s, when you introduce a little bit of chaos in between, it just, for me, it's like it would have been, maybe it's too adult for the story, but like kind of cool to like throw in some chaos and
Little
some
spice.
Yeah,
I
like
agree.
you got good guys and there's bad guys. Like we know that. Like we know that going into it. But it would have been interesting for Gina to have to
Reckon with that.
reconcile that there are people who during the 30s made bad choices or were coerced into thinking horrible things or justifying them for another passion.
Right.
Like look at the scientists that worked for the Nazis.
Right.
They themselves may not have been totally bona fide anti-Semites or Nazis, but they were being funded by this machine that was funding their passion projects. And
Sure.
then the United States bought them
and
right
and
after.
especially
same kind of thing with the
and I
US.
think-
Yeah, like brought them right back over.
And I would say in 38, it's much more acceptable to be
Well,
like,
it's-
like the war hasn't broken out yet,
like
right?
I said,
when does
they're
the
in
war
a
start?
very
Not 39?
interesting. No, the war starts in
42 is the invasion of Poland, right?
Well, yeah, no, 39 is the invasion
That's what
of
I
Poland.
thought. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, the war doesn't start till
So it's like we're
42.
right before it here. Right. Yeah.
I mean,
the Germany is unifying to
Yeah,
become
yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they already are in a way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, then they're already in power, all that stuff.
Also, to be fair, Gina is a born Italian, and a lot of native-born Italians in the 1930s were fascist sympathizers.
Love Mussolini's, yeah.
So it's not like
more Mussolini's.
it's not
Little
like it
Mussolinis.
totally, it's not like I'm not asking
No,
the
it's not out
indie
there,
be
yeah.
a Nazi sympathizer.
I think that's why the Vatican section was so interesting because,
Yeah, it
like
is.
Atria was saying, it's like I don't think you learn a lot about the black shirts and Mussolini and Italy as a country during
you
that
mean in the
time.
American school system you didn't learn it?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
but even like during I get what you're saying though, Gooch, in the way of like even like wartime. Like we definitely hear about like what's going on in Italy or taught about it, but like I feel like the focus is on
to
Germany.
understand like what the country like were they all in for it? Yeah, like
Yeah.
So seeing, I mean, like I assume that, there were some people in Italy who weren't drinking the Kool-Aid, and to see like the priests kind of be like pushing against another priest who is kind of like being selfish
man,
in
this is
there.
pretty
For
good.
If
the-
anyone is interested, there's a lot of really good literature about the relationship between the Catholic Church
I can only
and,
imagine.
and
And,
the Nazis.
yeah.
and,
Interesting.
and the real, and
I still want to see that
overall-
Vatican secret
I
archive.
love
probably nothing.
like the like Catholic mythology, if that's even a thing.
Have you
Like,
ever
when
been?
it's
Have you ever been to the
introduced-
Vatican?
No.
No.
Okay,
I would
when
love to.
when you're
Have
when
you?
you're in
Okay.
when you're in the Vatican,
I saw that too.
there is a lot of treasure that you can see with your eyes in the Vatican that's on display. About like 10 years ago, I guess, I was in Vatican City and I paid for a tour. And when I was playing this game, it reminded me of it. There is like a ton of treasure that,
laying
yes,
around.
that the Vatican admittedly publicizes that, whether some of it is from like Mesopotamia, like
Right.
Iraq,
Yeah.
or that like over time the Romans had,
Yeah, they've collected.
yeah.
So,
and it's and there's,
Why do you think
there's-
obelisks? Hello.
yeah. So like when you're playing the game, like it's legit that like the Vatican has access to like obviously like European archives, like like
for sure.
Oh, and like
But no.
the secret
Crazy-
police
yeah,
of the
yeah.
Vatican. That's just crazy.
yeah.
We were talking about the ending. Did any of you guys have any points to the ending before we talk about the secret
I was
ending?
bored, but I know that you liked it, so I
Yeah,
won't
I'm
rail
sorry.
on it.
No. I thought it was fine, or not fine. I did enjoy it a lot. I thought it was very Indiana Jones. I liked Voss being incinerated or whatever happened to him. I thought zapped, whatever you want to say,
by the wormhole.
whatever was
machine.
happening. Yeah.
I guess I just
Yeah.
like for indie story, like I think I expected that they would go out with a bigger like let me just like preface it with what I think, and maybe this sounds super cheesy to people watching this, but I think Interstellar is one of the coolest endings ever in a movie.
Sure.
But the reason I think it does is because he then leaves and goes to find Bran at the end. Like there's this like it leaves you with a like it leaves this protagonist that you really care for with more. It resolves everyone else's story, but leaves this protagonist with something more to go after. And
you
like
can almost imagine.
Yes,
Yeah.
and obviously we know Indy will do that, but something like I was hoping for something where at the end Indy would indicate to us that like he's ready for more. And it just felt like
Sure,
it felt like
okay.
the plane left and he kind of just did like his classic I'm going back to being Indy, but like I wanted him to be
Back
like
to school.
maybe that's why I wanted him to reject her. Like I wanted him to be like I'm
Nah,
fucking
fuck you.
Indiana Jones.
I'm adventuring,
This is my
motherfucker.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't know, like the whole concept of your protagonist being left with one more thing that you can like one venture that's meaningful to them, like going for Bran and Interstellar is like that classic like our new home venture and like that's what it reminded me of. Like you have a personal relationship between the protagonist and like a loved one,
Right.
but then like she was kind of just like bye, and then he was kind of like hey guys I'm Indy again, see you on the next one. And like I don't know.
Yeah,
True, what were you saying?
to me, I think that speaks to like how he is such
Yeah,
a
it's his
serialized character. But I
personality,
can
yeah.
appreciate what you're
Yeah,
saying,
it's
and
his
I actually
personality.
kind of agree with it.
Or
But
maybe
it did-
maybe they could have done the opposite, went like a funny route where like I don't know, like they could have had a sequence where he like was gonna be like I'm Indiana Jones, but then it was just him like studying, and at least it was a joke at the end. Like,
Right.
Like just something. It just felt
I
too,
was
like-
surprised that there was no resolution to the Marshall College stuff, which I guess
too.
is being
too.
held for I guess the next one. Obviously, he ends up back there. We know that. So I did feel like that was my only
Yeah,
dangling
true.
plot thread for me. But yeah, I don't know. I think it ended in like maybe I'd have to go back and watch the other movies, like the classic indie way, where it's like, yeah, he's gonna probably
plane
move on
takes
to his.
off.
The plane takes off, the credits roll. You know, he's gonna move on to his next adventure because that's what he always does.
What is the ending of
But-
Raiders? He
yeah, I'm
blows
trying to
up, the
think.
ark blows up or whatever. The Nazis get like,
Yeah, and then I think
The ark,
it gets
the ark
taken
of the
into
Covenant gets put in the warehouse
Yep.
thing.
right, and but
which
I
is
don't
like the
remember-
classic
But that's
Indy.
not
But
the
what,
end-
but what
end
happens
scene.
to Indy? Like what?
I can't remember if
I
he's being
can't
like
remember.
interviewed or anything. I don't remember. Actually.
Yeah, like, I don't.
I think the plane just
So
takes
maybe
off.
these movies like just don't have memorable fucking endings because, and maybe this is just perfect because this also doesn't have a very.
Did you want to explain the secret part? I mean, I guess just say it, not explain it.
Yeah, it's really short. It's a
Yeah.
really short cutscene that indicates that Tony Todd's character is still alive. Is that his name? The voice actor.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That he's like maybe like walking away from
Yeah.
a location.
Or
Okay.
Voss. I was
Yeah,
thinking like
they're-
like
Oh, really?
somebody
I mean,
got
Voss
it.
seems
Somebody,
very dead.
Somebody got away.
somebody got away.
Right. Okay.
and it's frozen over. Where are they?
I don't know. The ark is somewhere.
The
Oh
ark
yeah.
is
By the way,
somewhere.
I don't know if we ever met. We said that that stones
Yeah,
teleport people, right?
teleports.
Okay. Yeah. So
That's how the ship.
That's
got
how the
thrown
ship-
into
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the ship is somewhere. It gets through, and like somebody gets out. So I guess you could assume it is Locust.
that damn Noah's Ark meme you sent me, or the GIF from fucking Family Guy. Hey, what the hell is this? It's just like a monkey elephant or something. Oh god. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I think it manages to use all those historical aspects very interestingly. But you're right. I would tend to agree that I'm not like sitting here like thinking hardcore about the end. But I was sad when Gina took off. Like when she walked away and didn't give him a kiss. I was like,
Oh, you know,
no kiss, come on. And then she came
does.
back.
She
I was
comes
like,
back.
yes.
you know what was cute? That the plane was named after the sister's girlfriend's
yes.
nickname for her.
Yeah.
That is
They're,
sweet.
they're in a
Dame
relationship.
Dame Nawal. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. I thought she was a great character too. Actually,
Yeah, I actually
I
thought she was
really
good
liked
too.
her. as
Dame
well.
She
Wall,
was good.
she's a pretty notable actor, right?
No,
I feel like
really?
I've seen her somewhere before.
I don't
Maybe
know.
I don't know.
She was good,
also
though.
like Father.
Oh yeah.
Antonio.
Oh,
Alfred,
yeah,
Alfredo.
I
don't
can't
know.
remember.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He was
too.
great. Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
characters are really good. I could have done.
I like his like he can't hear.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
He likes records.
He
and
does.
shit.
He
Yeah.
likes all the American music and stuff. Yeah, it's
he
really
bring-
good.
He like coerces him with a record and some candy.
I will just finish off my thoughts by saying this game does. I'm sad you had so many technical issues because I don't feel like I've been hearing a lot
Other
about
than that, like I will say this game is really good.
Well, and I think it just looks gorgeous too in a lot of scenes. Like, did you guys think Indy's eyes were kind of big at some points? I don't know why. That was something that was weirdly in my head. But either way, just the environments themselves, like I said, when you come to that temple head in Sakatai, I'm like, I just kind of sat there and just drank them in because they do look so beautiful.
One thing we didn't talk about. Well, I have 2 points. They're both kind of different. I like the progression of like picking up the magazines and
Yes.
like learning from that. Obviously, this game is about stealth and fist fighting, not about guns. So guns is truly just like this last resort option. But the gunplay, even though it's there very little, doesn't really feel that great.
Doesn't feel impactful.
I'm
They
curious
really
as to
don't.
why.
They don't want you to use them. I feel like they're there, like you're saying.
I
for-
didn't use it until maybe the third act.
Same.
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
kind
when
of
it gets
have
kinda
to.
heavy, yeah.
I think they
Ooh.
really wanted you to focus on the stealth.
As a gun nut, I wanna give a shout out to Machine Games for properly not putting the MP40 in a game in an era where the MP40 didn't exist, which almost every Indiana Jones film
Has done.
fails at this and puts the MP40 in it.
It's the Sten, right?
No, it's a
It's not.
no, a Sten is a British gun. It's a different machine pistol. It's like an MP. It's prior to the MP38. It's like a Waffen machine pistol. It's prior to the MP40.
Okay.
Interesting.
But
I
yeah,
thought it looked like
it
the
is a
Sten with
side
the- with the
loading. It's
side
a side
when you
loading
hold it.
magazine.
Right,
yeah.
right.
But it's a German side loading magazine.
Got it. Not the British
Pistol
one.
cartridged machine
cool.
gun.
Yeah, good
So
point.
shout out to them for doing that properly and taking the iconic MP40 out of
And
the hands of the Nazis.
I feel like it wouldn't be a good Indiana Jones review if we didn't talk about this. I think I don't know. We don't know. We can assume there's another Uncharted game being made. We know there's a new Tomb Raiders coming.
There's definitely a new Uncharted too.
They need to look at this and I think take some ideas. The way the temples are done, the puzzles are done are really good. Like the way, like I think Tomb Raider more than Uncharted maybe even Uncharted. Uncharted is too much of a like indie.
I haven't played enough
Nathan
Uncharted
Drake
to
is gunning down like entire countries.
Right.
You know, it's a bit weird. Even Lara in the 2013 Tomb Raiders is like killing people.
Right.
Like it is her job more than it is being an archaeologist.
Yeah.
I think the way the pacing is, the puzzles, the focus on stealth and fist fighting over
even the first person
gunplay.
view. Yeah.
Like I think there's a lot to take there from the games that come from Indiana Jones movies.
It's true.
You
It's
know,
funny
like
how
the-
it's like worked back around. Like
Right.
obviously those games were inspired by Indiana Jones
Yep.
and these pulp novels, but like to see it kind of wrap back into itself with the video game and do it so well
And I think,
is wild.
And I think again, to wrap again that the sequels of these series that were inspired by indie can take from what the indie game did.
Sure.
Because I think like, you know, this is a very immersive sim game. I feel like Tomb Raider can be a very immersive sim rather than being a third person action game. And same with Uncharted. And if they go the route with Cassie Drake, and I think there is a idea for her character to be different than Nathan.
Or
you know?
just do the opposite and distinguish yourself from this. Like, don't replicate it, but distinguish your game from it. Like, I don't want to play Uncharted and feel like, oh, this feels a lot like when I played Indiana Jones. I want to play Uncharted and be like, damn, this is what I liked about Uncharted that wasn't in Indiana Jones.
And even
because
Uncharted,
Uncharted's
yeah.
so fucking good. Like, I'm not gonna start saying.
And it's so,
Like-
and I feel like Uncharted, correct me if I'm wrong, is much more action based than this,
Yeah,
right?
it
Like
is.
it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's and
You've never played any Uncharted?
I should say I played the first.
MP18.
I played the first
That's
one.
the gun. MP18.
Gotcha. And I think that this,
Sorry.
like
That's okay.
Late
machine
World War
games,
One.
they had to distinguish themselves from like an Uncharted or a Tomb Raider, and I think they did that first and foremost with the first person view and leaning into those immersive sim mechanics that you're talking about, Gooch. I think you're right though, Phil, that Uncharted and Tomb Raider should retain their identities as more action focused. You know, it's gunplay
Okay.
even more so. The puzzles are definitely there in Uncharted and Tomb Raider, but I did find them a bit more academically engaging, for lack of a better term.
I guess
I
part,
loved sitting
part
out
of
there
me,
writing out the codes. And
Part
stuff.
of me
It
has
was
like
so
a
fun.
perfect idea for Lara Croft, and it's sort of a combination of the first one or the first set of games where she's a bit of a cocky son of a bitch, and she's like, but like very good at her job, but like less of like a killer kind of person, more of like an archaeologist. I think
Not so
I
much
think that-
murdering. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she does a lot of murdering on all the
A healthy balance between Indy and Drake, if you will, because Drake seems to love the killing for sure, right? But then also not love it.
I mean,
he does a lot of it. I
does
should say.
I mean, the game just forces you to kill.
yeah, a lot of people. Yeah,
yeah.
love it isn't the correct
Well,
term.
Uncharted,
Yeah.
But
Uncharted 1 and 2, because mechanically, because of the set design for the game,
Right.
they're almost like cover shooters.
Sure.
Where they throw a ton of dumb
Baddies.
enemies
Yeah, yeah.
at you. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's
and
not
Tomb
really.
Raider, I like how it becomes a plot point. Like Lara is like kind of scarred by all the killing she's done over these 3 games, and it's like it's going to carry into what's next, and you know whatever. But yeah, I think there's something to learn, if anything.
100%.
But I think this is one of my favorite games of last year. I'm not sure if it is my. I think I have a lot of best games of the year. Like I guess it could be my game of the year. We'll find out next week when we record that podcast, and I really sit down and think about what my best games of the year was. But this is definitely one of them. Indiana Jones was a very unique title, and I'm curious if it'll be on Game of the Year in 2025.
Yeah, me too.
Because it came out in 2024.
I have a theory about that it 100% will, and it's because of the PlayStation 5 launch. It will launch halfway through the year. It'll get another bump of everyone playing.
Maybe
it,
this is
playing
how
it now.
Xbox planned it.
The reason I have not raved about Indiana Jones the way that maybe it should be is because I think this game is really, really good, but it's really, really safe. It takes all of the safe things we know make video games good and does them really, really well.
Sure.
But it does not take pretty much any risks. It's not stylistic at all. So like there's a certain element of like when I really rave about a game, it's normally because it steps outside of like I really like Josef Fares. I really like I'm not a Kojima fan.
Sure.
But like I respect the shit out of the risks he takes in storytelling, in making you carry a backpack and be a postal service guy in a video game, and like all those weird little things that make certain games that are like just fucking long-term respected. This game does not feel that way to me. It's just everything that makes a safe video game good. This has all of that, and it's really good.
So I think I agree 100% from like a stylistic point of view, but I do think that they took a large chance with the first-person view.
I'm just saying,
I agree, but I totally.
I'm just saying,
agree.
maybe this will make more sense.
Yeah.
You're gonna put puzzles in a game. This game has done it better than anybody.
Sure.
If you're gonna do,
that was my point earlier.
Yeah, if you're gonna do like a first-person location-based walkthrough game,
sure,
this game does it better than anybody. If you're gonna do an Indiana Jones IP from the '80s game, this game does it better than anybody's ever done it. Like,
sure.
So all of the things that like I like about those, if you're gonna do historical stuff, this game did it better than anybody does it. Like, and Machine Games was tasked with that, and they're, in my opinion, the best team to do that. Like, if you haven't played the Wolfenstein games and you liked this, go play Wolfenstein, because everything that was good in this is indicated in the earlier Wolfenstein games. Like, I'm telling you, like for me, playing indie, picking up a postcard with like the pyramids of Giza, like Khafre's tomb or whatever, that's the best part of the game. I don't need even need the whip. I don't like.
We didn't even talk about the whip.
The whip's awesome.
I mean, it's good.
Yeah,
you know?
all that
It
stuff
does
is
its
good.
job.
Again, a game where you're in first person and there's melee. No one's ever done it this cool before. Like the animations, like in first person, like
look great. Yeah,
everything safe was done better than anybody else has done. I'm not gonna say like graphically, but it hits the bar. It's not lower than where it should be. Like graphically, it hit it. Sound design, it definitely hit it. Like narrative, it hit it. Everything that it had to do. Like, I'm not saying 10 out of 10, but like that's how you hit a 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
it just didn't.
It might be a 10 out of 10.
I think the only issue I have is that pacing and Succotai. Everything else, I really like, and I'm willing to kind of, push that negative to the side and see.
Yes, it is funny how quickly you can get through these zones. Like if you do none of the side stuff.
Yeah,
like I think you can be in there in all these for like maybe I think the game's 15 hours if you like mainline.
All right,
like,
so maybe this is what I'll say. Great Circle is a 10 out of 10, but games like Cuphead and Death Stranding are like 11 out of 10
because they're
like
10
uniquely fucking crazy once in a generation,
and they should
never get it again.
Yes,
nobody will make it.
So like this is a 10 out of 10, but
in
then
execution.
Yes,
because anyone can make an indie game.
Yes,
right. Technically.
Yes. But then there are certain games that come along that get like the 11 out of 10 that are just fucking crazy. Like,
well, especially with something like a Death Stranding that, by all intent, like, how commercially successful was that game?
Not as successful as Kojima wanted it to be.
Right. So, but even still, though, the fact that it's successful at all and it takes that big of a leap and is as good as it is, I agree with you. Kind of puts it on another echelon. I just do respect them for, I think, taking this at an angle that when you first tell me about Indiana Jones game, I don't think I don't think first person. I don't think about all these immersive sim elements being added in. I don't even know necessarily what you're gonna do, like narrative wise, if you're gonna go like straightforward and just be a linear experience or have these open zones. I just think that they could not have made better choices, and I can't help but echo what you're saying. 10 out of 10 for me. I think it's between this and Outlaws for me for last year for my game of the year. I'm gonna have to simmer on it for a while.
We liked Outlaws.
I did too. I feel everybody was really hard on Outlaws.
Yeah,
dude.
I thought it was good.
I said it on the choir,
but it was not a 10 out of 10.
Sure, I guess that's
it wasn't.
Okay, that's fair.
So
maybe that in and of itself should eliminate it for me, but I don't know why. I just had so much fun with that game.
I liked it.
I have one more question. We'll kind of round robin to quickly wrap it up. What do you think's next for Machine Games? Is it back to Wolfenstein?
No, it's indie. I think it's indie too. 100%, especially with the success of this.
Okay.
And I think we're going to see even more success when this is released on PS5. I think you're going to see another jump in sales.
I do want to remind everybody that the new Colossus is definitely not as good as the New Order, and Youngblood was trash. So, like, Wolfenstein didn't necessarily leave off on the best note with its last two games.
So I need to finish the second one. I started Wolfenstein 2, and I never got around to it. I need to.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What do you think's next?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know, because it's such an internal conversation that I really don't know, and I don't know enough about it, but I would be good with either. I think that Wolfenstein needs somewhat of a reset again because of where it landed. So it may make sense for them to just be like, you know what, like, let's just stick with indie because we know we have somewhere to go with that. I think there's a DLC that's guaranteed because it was a part of that. Yeah, it was a part of the pre-order for the collector's edition. Says the Circle of Giants or whatever. The something of Giants.
So that's probably what that that's leading into. Then I would assume with Locust.
I don't think I realized that.
Locust.
Well, that's
Yeah.
cool. I'm looking forward to jumping into
so there's
DLC.
that to look forward to. Best Easter egg in this game was in Marshall College. In case anybody missed it, go find it because it's cool. It is a reference to Tokyo Disney Sea and Disneyland Anaheim.
What?
The ride, Indiana Jones
Oh,
ride.
the
attraction.
ride.
Yeah.
I was like,
No. When you go to Marshall College, you may have found it and not realize what it was.
Right.
It's the temple, the Indian temple from the attraction in Disneyland.
Oh, that's cool.
From 1995.
That's
That was
awesome.
the coolest one that I found.
Deep cut.
I was super
man.
disappointed that unless somebody please correct me, even if somebody sees this, I've looked and have not found a single Wolfenstein or BJ Blazkowicz reference in this, and which is questionable because it takes place in the same era. I know one is like alternate universe, but you could have thrown in something
like the name.
Yes,
yeah,
like you
yeah.
could have just said like 101st Airborne,
There
BJ
has to
Blazkowicz,
be something.
but there was nothing that I found. And lastly, Troy Baker mentioned this in an interview recently that this doesn't exist, so don't go looking for it. No Uncharted reference.
Did you hear the
think that
story
makes
about Todd casting him?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
very
did.
interesting.
I thought that was because
Yeah, I did.
honestly, I think everyone would have that same impression. So the story is Todd Howard did not want Troy Baker to be playing Indiana Jones.
he said
and
it
then-
to his face. He said it like to him in like an interview. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and I get it. I'm like, Troy Baker's one of the biggest video game voice actors ever. Like, I understand.
And they
I-
didn't announce him before they showed the trailer, right? We
No,
didn't know who
we-
it was.
No,
Right. Okay.
No. And then that he listened to his audition and
They did
he
a blind
couldn't
test,
tell.
yeah.
I was
Uh-huh.
like, that's crazy, man.
That is
Especially
crazy.
for somebody of Troy's caliber and Todd's character to be having like that kind of conversation where Todd's like, no, I don't want Troy Baker in my game. you
And then
know?
the blind test, yeah, he's just like, well, we did. I think he said we did like 3 of them, and they chose you every single time. So yeah, it's you.
So, but what do I think Machines Games is doing? Honestly, I think, yeah, they're going to do another indie project. I have a funny feeling that Wolfenstein will be shelved because I'm kind of echoing exactly what Phil said. I think they need to approach it a bit differently.
Yeah, I do too.
Maybe they need to, I mean, do we need another World War II shooter? Maybe it is going back to World War II. Maybe it's not being
Dude, maybe they'll do like
BJ and-
BJ's dad in World War One or like some.
Yeah, I
like
feel like
some
they
way
gotta
to
approach it
evade.
differently because the new Colossus just was not it.
The new
for me.
Colossus, they just gave everything they had. Like, just full disclosure, somebody who's put a lot of hours into it really likes it. It's not that they didn't execute it properly. It's not that like they didn't dedicate themselves to the experience mechanically. It's a fucking awesome and fun Wolfenstein game. It's just they put a lot into it narrative wise and story wise.
Yeah,
they threw so much at it, and some of it stuck because like some of it was cool. Like, we're in America, that was the coolest part of it. But there was a lot of resolve in it, and then like Youngblood told the story even afterward. It was so wonky and ugly and
it was
weird. And,
yeah, I don't think
So-
Machine Games did Youngblood. Maybe it evolved to a slight degree,
Yeah.
but I think another studio did it. Yeah, I think.
they did way too much with
Like,
New
I mean, look at
Colossus.
Doom. The Dark Ages was not. I think I told you. I listened to your
Not the Dark Age,
Returnal.
Doom Eternal. Or,
Right,
yeah,
I
yeah.
listened to our Returnal review after I beat the game, and like it was so funny how like it. Yeah, I'm like, oh, this really still lines up. Like, this is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Had the same opinions you guys did. A few different ones, but look at Doom: The Dark Ages. That's not. I mean, I think you could have looked into the lore of Doom and been like, yeah, they could go there. But I don't think to actually see it and be like, wow, they're going to like medieval Doom. We're getting something like totally different. Because like, where were you gonna go with Eternal?
Right.
Like the DLC for Doom Eternal, like it's like smelling its own farts.
Sure.
Like they're like really double downing on this weird lore that I couldn't give a fuck about.
Sure.
Like I'm just like, this is like kind of interesting and I'm playing this, but I'm like, I don't care about this codex page that has nothing to do with any of this. Like I don't give a shit.
But
Yeah,
to your point,
I feel like going in like they could go in a
to your
similar
point,
direction.
Doom is doing what Wolfenstein. Technically, they could do a similar thing. Like I said, like just kind of like you don't have to reset the whole franchise. Just reset.
Do you think not
the
having?
environment.
I mean, I know World
There
War
are-
is not Nazis.
there are
Do you think
other-
not having Nazis will kind of?
There's other people that are worth punching.
Sure, but I feel like if you were like, no, if you, I don't know, I feel like
I mean,
those are
it's
so
true. Like, there's-
intrinsically
No, yeah.
connected though. Like when I think of Wolfenstein,
They
you're
make
killing
Nazis.
Nazis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you were like, no, if you're like Wolfenstein, new whatever, they're killing World War I Germans, I'd be like, eh. okay, I'll play it, but like,
I'd have to think about it,
Yeah.
but I could find some really fun people to
oh, I'm
punch in
sure.
history.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's just more. It's like
that
the
Nazi,
tie.
Yeah.
that Nazi symbolism. With
I mean,
pushing
okay,
games.
And I
Alright.
feel like that's even happened with Indy. Like it's like he's always fighting Nazis. Like they
Yeah,
tried
and
Temple
then
of Doom, and then they're
yeah.
like, oh no. Apparently for some reason, because
and
I
don't
enjoy
even.
it. But
Oh well, he is still fighting Germans in Dial of Destiny.
yeah, it's Nazis.
Well, he's not in Crystal Skull.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
right. True.
well, right.
That's right.
You said
right.
They're
they're
Soviets.
Soviets.
And,
It's
well,
not
yeah.
the same.
I do like I like Greats or Dial of Destiny better than wow, I can't even remember
King of
the
the
name
Crystal Skull.
King of the Crystal Skull, but
I almost
mostly
couldn't
for the
watch
last
that.
like 30 minutes.
I have to admit, it's funny that this is Great Circle is better
Yep,
is better
I
than
thought that
most of
too.
the Indiana Jones movies.
I
we've gotten.
texted Tom DeFolvio when I beat it, and I said best Indiana Jones movie since Raiders.
It's true.
Well, since
can
the
we just
new
get-
ones, for
Can we
sure.
just get
Yeah.
games? Like we don't need.
Yeah.
Shelve Harrison Ford. We don't need movies. Like just make games.
And
dude.
full
This is
disclosure,
great.
I'm saying best since Raiders, meaning Raiders is like in my opinion is the best indie film.
Sure.
Not my favorite. So just
Temple of
Gotcha.
Doom.
Okay, that makes sense.
no.
Last Crusade. Okay.
I think
100%.
Temple of Doom might be mine.
It's pretty. Fun.
I love
I
Temple
think
of
Temple
Doom.
of Doom is one of the
Ma-
worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
You don't like.
But we can
Surround?
save that for
That
another
could be a whole
time.
nother.
Yeah, we
that
can
could be
save
a
it
whole
for
nother.
another time.
I
but
think if we get a sequel to Great Circle, we need a short round kind of character.
I do like Short Round, and I also like the opening sequence of Temple of Doom, and the third act is decent. But most of that film I could take and burn in a fire pit somewhere. I would take Crystal Skull.
Would you rip
over
its
it.
heart out?
I
Really?
prefer Crystal Skull to Temple of Doom.
That's
Wow,
crazy.
That's
I think Dial of Destiny is the worst.
we
one.
need to take you to a psychologist. No, I'm kidding.
Dial of Destiny is the
Yeah,
worst.
I
Then
don't
Temple
know.
of Doom. Then
I think
Skull.
Crystal Skull's the worst for me. Dial of Destiny, Raiders, third
Last
one,
Crusade.
fuck, and then
Let me consult
I think Temple of
my
Doom.
letterboxed.
I
review,
actually don't,
'cause
and that's totally off my head. I
definitely
could have said
them
something
here.
even different when we were doing it.
My rankings for Indiana Jones goes as follows: Last Crusade, Temple of Doom, Raiders, Dial of Destiny, Kingdom.
I think that's probably the consensus generally. I think most people would say it's Raiders, Last Crusade, Temple of Doom.
Yeah, those first
Yeah.
three are just like interchangeable, but like those two others are in the back. But anyway, trio.
Is that it, gentlemen?
Yeah.
All
Well,
we have to say.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
Not
We loved
11
it.
out of 10,
Yeah.
but 10 out of 10.
Absolutely.
Phil, thanks for coming out
Yeah,
and
dude,
being a part
seriously.
of this. I
Great
know
stuff.
we're recording this on a snow date here. We're supposed to get snow tomorrow, so we
Yeah.
had to reschedule. But we're getting you on your last hoorah before you have your kids.
Yeah,
so
man.
Yeah.
we appreciate it.
Good luck, dude.
I'm gonna
Congrats.
name her
Yeah.
Indiana.
And
Come here, Indy. Come here.
Come here, Indy. Come here, girl.
Come here,
Oh, man.
Mary.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching with us. If you've been with us live on twitch.tv/Delco Nerd Network, we really appreciate your time. You can find this podcast, anywhere podcasts are found. Just search Delco Nerd Network on your app of choice. We are on all the social medias as well, at Delco Nerds, on anything with an @ sign. We got a Facebook page, Discord channel, all that good stuff will be linked down below. You can even email us your comments, questions, or concerns to delconerds@gmail.com. We'd be happy to get back to you. You can find all this information on our website, delconerdnetwork.com. But for Gooch, for Phil, I've been Trio. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay nerdy. We will see you next time.